Hi, this is a supplement to your regular lectures and your regular module wrap-ups. One of the things about going into healthcare, I didn't really realize this at the time, but healthcare is probably one of the most exciting industries that is out there. And let me couch that. There's so much going on. There's legislation that is constantly changing. There are attacks and there's innovations within the software and within durable medical equipment, patient care, certainly evidence-based practice. There's always something going on in healthcare. So I really didn't realize that working as being a student nurse, being a PCA on the floor. I was so focused on how to take care of patients, just general basic skills, everything from phlebotomy or starting an IV to catheterization to dressing changes, just really the basic information. Some of the more advanced stuff like the acid base imbalance, metabolic acidosis and alkalosis and such. So, but I didn't really see the big picture of how much is happening within the industry. And to give you an idea, there's been a couple things that have happened just here in the last week or so. That there was a couple of hospitals in Ohio that were actually victims of ransomware attacks. And although it stated that there was no PHI breach, what it functionally did was it required them to go down to a paper-based backup. Again, this is disaster recovery that we talked about. A paper-based backup of doing patient care, diverting patients from their emergency room to other hospitals. And if you think about the downtime that was involved, how much money did that cost the hospital? So even though the ransomware attack was not successful, or reportedly not successful, how much in actual dollars did that affect those two hospitals? So those are things that you certainly can keep in mind. Another incident that just happened, there was a dental group, Key Dental Group, who had a agreement with Mogo, a software vendor, and there was some sort of dispute, and Mogo basically locked them out of 4,000 patient records. Now, that's certainly a violation of the end-user license agreement and probably a HIPAA violation as well. But why would a vendor withhold patient information from a practice that they felt was secure in a cloud somewhere on a remote server? Why would they hold that data, that patient information? And the only thing I can think of is that there was some sort of a dispute in payment, although that hasn't really been brought to light. And Key Dental has actually filed a lawsuit for injunctive relief against Mogo. But the vendor may not have any alternative, or they feel like they don't have any alternative. They certainly do. They have litigation that they could do. But they chose to withhold the patient data. And if you're a dental practice and you're looking for software, would you think twice about going with Mogo? I mean, how damaging could that possibly be for that particular vendor? It's really funny because PHI breach is kind of what we're talking about. Healthcare.gov was breached last October, and 94,000 patient records, or I should say, insured records were potentially compromised. That's of particular interest to me because I use healthcare.gov to obtain my health insurance. And I could have been one of those 94,000 people. And it includes everything from salary to, because the IRS feeds into healthcare.gov, or at least they do a data check with healthcare.gov, to assume or to ascertain how much money is going to be utilized to offset, or how much tax credit is used to offset some people's insurance premiums. Even such information such as immigration status. And that breach of trust from a government entity, that's almost even worse than a private practice or worse than a hospital system. But that occurs out there. And, I'm looking at these resources because I read resources quite frequently, typically 15 minutes to half an hour a day. I'm looking at some sort of healthcare, whether it's for this course or for my own personal benefit. And when I'm looking at these resources, one of the things that popped into my mind was that a couple of papers ago, a number of you used an article that was written by a gentleman who turned out to be a professional writer. And even though he did a very good job of writing about this particular topic in healthcare, He also writes about, mortgages, quite a lot of sports, actually has a couple of books on sports that he had written. And I wouldn't consider him a subject matter expert. So what is a subject matter expert? A subject matter expert typically, it's generally agreed to, is somebody that has 10,000 hours in the field. Now, I agree with that. So that's about 5 years of work history in the field to be a subject matter expert. But I also want to throw on top of that recency. Because if you're an anthropology, somebody in anthropology, and you haven't worked in anthropology in 4 or 5 years, you're probably still a subject matter expert. Not a lot has changed. Maybe some things have been updated, or they found some new things, or new theories have come about, but generally your body of knowledge is pretty solid because of the particular topic. As far as nursing, I would be considered under that definition a subject matter expert in nursing. But the truth is I haven't touched a patient in over 10 years, and I have no idea what's going on the floor right now. I take that back. I have an idea, but it's a very general idea. I really don't know what nurses face on a day-to-day situation now. I could tell you what it was like 10 years ago, but not right now. So because of that, because of the recency, I would not consider myself a subject matter expert in the field of nursing. That's just how I look at it. So when I'm looking through these articles and some of these topics and some of the things that I assign to you, one of the tests that I use is I take a look at the resource. And if I look at the resource in the last 5 to 10 articles or papers or what have you that they've written, there's no negative information. That smacks of either vendor bias or of some situation where they're just putting out fluff and good news. And that's really not what we want. We want a real good solid, now there is good news pieces, but we also want a good solid understanding of what's going on. And unfortunately, it does include a lot of negative press. So if you're looking at your resources or you're utilizing a resource, make sure that it's that it's unbiased and there's fair reporting on both sides. The positives of benefits or things that we have accomplished in healthcare or with healthcare IT, and also some of the issues that have occurred, whether it be with vendors, with hospitals. I know that UPMC was just ordered to protect their employee information as it would be PHI. So those are some things that are going on that are not necessarily positive, but they are what's going on. And in some way, shape, or form may impact you at some point in time. So I really appreciate the progress journals and some of the information I've read. I really think that your papers have improved over time. And keep in mind that when I'm reading your papers, I have all of your papers up for me to look at. So I'm looking at your paper 1, 2, 3 when I'm grading 4. And if I'm seeing that some of the same mistakes are occurring or some of the issues that I've asked you to correct are still occurring, then you're not getting points for those. And what I would like to see is a progression, because most of you write very well. But the problem is that you can write better. And that's one of the things, that's one of my jobs, is to make sure that you are writing better. So when I take a look at your final paper, I'm looking at all 4 of your papers to judge the improvement that I've seen over time. Please, please, please use smart thinking. That's a tool that Mercy College provides for you, and you should be availing yourself of that. This improvement in writing, regardless of whether you're in healthcare or you're somebody or somewhere else, or where your career takes you 5, 10, 20 years from now, these will be things that you'll be able to take with you to help you succeed professionally, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what career path you end up taking. So that's one of the reasons why I really am focused so much on that. Other than that, like I said, the progress journals, I appreciate the responses, and I will continue to try to get your grades back to you as quickly as possible and grade things as quickly as possible so that you have a good idea of where you stand. Most of you are sitting between an A and a B, and this final paper will really determine whether you fall on the side of an A or whether you fall on the side of a B. Same thing with the people that are in the low B, high C. Depending upon how this final paper looks, really is going to help determine what your final grade is going to be. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I will talk to you soon.